You used me. You used me to fill this house. You used me to fill your collection plate every week. You were doing God's work. Oh, so was it God that took away my childhood? Was it God that wouldn't let me play ball or be with a girl or go to the movies? I'm the only black man in all of West Indianapolis who can't dance, Daddy. And I heard an angel say with a loud voice, woe, 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 woe to the inhabitants of the earth. I never heard the angel, Daddy. You will. You will. Armageddon. The end is near. How can you possibly believe anything that we preach on Sundays?
I believe in his teachings.
I don't.
You deny your destiny. You deny God himself. And you deny me.
Nobody has a destiny. We're all just stumbling around in the dark.
BoogeyMan band coming round the bend. Is BoogeyMan band. Is BoogeyMan band.
Greetings, my fellow Fred Fiends, and thanks so much for dropping by the Horror Zone channel. I hope everyone's doing well. Today's video is reviving a series that I started about 10 years ago. I did 2 videos in this series, one focusing on Donald Pleasance, who played Dr. Loomis in the Halloween franchise, and the other focusing on John DeLeMay, who played Ryan Dallion on the Friday the 13th television series. And this segment is called Horror Heroes. And if people have been following my channel, they know that earlier this year, I did 3 videos on the Friday the 13th television series. The one that I just mentioned, John DeLeMay, was the star of, at least for the first 2 seasons. And I idolized that character that he played. And I did 3 videos, 1 video for each of the seasons. There was only 3 seasons of that show. You know, people did watch. There wasn't a lot of feedback on them. And I had wanted to do the same kind of setup for a couple of other shows, The Incredible Hulk with Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby, and then The Dead Zone starring Anthony Michael Hall, one of my heroes. And back in 2013, I did a retrospective on it, and then in 2020 during the pandemic, I did another one, and that time I broke down like each of the seasons, and I showcased my DVD collection. So I felt like that was kind of enough, and I have decided not to go forward and do 6 episodes on each individual season of the show. Instead, what I want to do is I want to talk about an actor on the show, not Anthony Michael Hall, because I feel like I did that one to death with those other 2 videos that I've done. This time I want to talk about John L. Adams, who played Bruce Lewis on the show. Unlike the first 2 segments of this series, focusing on Donald Pleasance and John DeLeMay, who pretty much were influences on me when I was a kid. This is something where I didn't know who John L. Adams was, even though he had been acting in other things prior to The Dead Zone. The Dead Zone was the first thing I saw him in, and that show didn't premiere until June of 2002, so I was 28 years old when the show first premiered on the USA Network. And to give a little, just a real quick synopsis of the Dead Zone television series, it is based on Stephen King's 1979 novel of the same name, which was also adapted by David Cronenberg in a 1983 film starring Christopher Walken and Martin Sheen. So the basic premise of the show revolves around Johnny Smith, who is a small-town science teacher. He's involved in a car accident that leaves him comatose for about 6 years. He regains consciousness, having triggered an unused part of his brain called the Dead Zone, which allows him to have visions of past and future events which are triggered by touching items or people. His attempts to do good, though, are complicated by intermittent visions of apocalyptic events brought about following the future election of congressional candidate Greg Stilson. And even though The Dead Zone was the first thing I would see John L. Adams in, he started acting several years before that. Shows like Pacific Blue. He actually a recurring role on the show Just Deal, where he played Mr. Pena. He would go on to have guest appearances on CSI Crime Scene Investigation, Arrested Development, NCIS, and Secrets of a Small Town. In 2007, he took a break from acting and actually went to law school to become a lawyer. And only recently started getting back into acting after a very long hiatus. During the pandemic, he did a one-man show called Nat's Last Struggle, playing Nat Turner. And following that, he actually would play a recurring character on the television show Wolfpack, which only ran for one season, unfortunately. It was starring Sarah Michelle Gellar. He also had a very small part in the recent remake of The Color Purple. And like I said, my initial hook to watch The Dead Zone was Anthony Michael Hall. When I found out that he was doing a Stephen King property, I was so excited, summer of 2002, to watch it with my fiance, who became my wife at the time. And I remember us watching the two-parter, the pilot. As the show progressed and the relationship between Bruce and Johnny got stronger, because initially he was sort of the support system for him, because Johnny was coming out of this coma, his life was thrown upside down, and mentally he was still, where he was when the car accident happened. Sarah and him were planning their future together. Everything got, completely uprooted in that time, and now he was having to sort of learn, to navigate life again 6 years later, this new skill that he had in terms of his psychic abilities. And Bruce sort of provided that that center for him. I felt like he was there to sort of bring him back down when things were kind of pushing him to get depressed, and I felt like Bruce was always the one to sort of ground him. And that's what Bruce pretty much, that was his role on the show. And at the end of season 1, Johnny does get the vision about Armageddon after meeting Greg Stilson for the first time, and he keeps pretty much everybody in the dark about it. So he's on this quest to sort of stop this man from achieving any type of power politically. And even though Bruce knows that, there's something about him that Johnny is against, it's not until episode 12 of season 2, Zion, which I think is one of the best shows of the entire series. And I do think there was some great episodes prior to Zion where Bruce and Johnny teamed up, like Enemy Mine, Here There Be Monsters, Precipitate. Those are some of the strong ones. But Zion is where the Bruce character became more of a confidant than just Johnny's friend. And I think it was just the way that episode was structured. And what I found out through this interview that John Adams gave a couple years ago on the show called John Marshall's Lunch Therapy, I'll put the link down to that interview in the description. He talks about the fact that a lot of his own life was interjected into the script. John did grow up with a father who was a preacher, and in the episode Zion, Louis Gossett Jr. plays Bruce's father. The episode deals with Johnny and Bruce going back to Johnny's home to deal with his father's passing. This long vision that happens that shows what would have happened had Bruce not been in Johnny's life. If Johnny and Bruce had never met, if Bruce never became a physical therapist and ended up becoming a pastor in his dad's church, what the events would have been like in Johnny's life. And it really mirrors the outcome for the Johnny Smith character in both the movie by Cronenberg and Stephen King's novel. And it's a powerful episode because it is Bruce's episode. Johnny is very kind of peppered out throughout the episode, but it's John L. Adams' time to shine, and boy does he. He commands the episode. His interactions with Louis Gossett Jr. are absolutely fantastic, and it just made me, I was already a fan of Bruce, and I think a lot of what I was a fan of Bruce and John's portrayal of Bruce was a lot of it came from his style, but I also just liked the way that he seemed like an easygoing, cool guy. Very, had great camaraderie with Anthony Michael Hall. They just had terrific chemistry. I think the best chemistry in the entire series. And just the Johnny Bruce dynamic was what made me the fan of the show. And to see this episode where John L. Adams finally got to shine, showcasing his history as well as how relevant he is to Johnny's quest to stop Stilson, it was amazing, and it made their relationship that much more important. And it was from there on that I felt like the show sort of transcended, especially through the course of the rest of season 2 and all of season 3. Season 3 had one of my other favorite episodes that had a Bruce and Johnny dynamic, and that was called Shadows. Johnny gets a vision showing him killing a man in revenge for an upcoming murder, and it turns out to be Bruce. And throughout the episode, Johnny's trying to figure out what inevitably leads up to Bruce being killed. And it's another really gut punch of an episode. And again, it's because of that strong dynamic. Season 5, though, had some great ones. Independence Day is probably my favorite episode, one of my favorite episodes of the entire series, and it was directed by Chris Bruno, who played Walt Bannerman on it. And in this one, very much like Shadows, Johnny sees a vision of Bruce dying in a car accident. And they get stuck on this lockdown stretch of Interstate 95. And what Johnny's visions keep showing, multi-fatality pileup, and that's what's going to lead to Bruce's death. And there's also this escaped felon that's on the loose somewhere near the highway. It's a great episode. It also showed a little bit of conflict between Johnny and Bruce because, you know, Johnny can see whatever he wants, and he happens to see something from Bruce's past, and it pisses him off. And I actually like that. You know, Bruce is always going to have Johnny's back, but there's that, you know, like privacy. And I really liked the way that it was played between the two actors. It's a great episode. There's some terrific action moments in it, but it's just a fun episode to watch because it's like trying to solve this riddle of where is this convict, who is this convict, is he among the people that we're seeing there? I just, again, the dynamic between Bruce and Johnny really elevated that episode, and Chris Bruno did a fantastic job directing. In Vortex, it very much plays kind of like a callback to 1993's Waco, Texas siege with David Koresh. Pretty much what you have is Johnny and Bruce infiltrating this compound led by this cult leader who's pretty much going to sacrifice all of his followers in this explosion. And again, this one does talk about, you know, Johnny's premonitions to what's going on. Stilson is involved in this because Johnny's put on trial for what ends up happening at the compound. And Bruce goes along with him, you know, to back him up. There's a couple moments in there where Johnny's visions of the end of the world are brought up to the cult members. I mean, it's a great episode, very heartfelt, because it all, you know, sort of evolves from Johnny having this vision of this little girl dying from one of the explosives. So it's a great episode, and again, you know, that Bruce-Johnny dynamic just really shine through in this episode. And then you have Revelations, which is the episode that John L. Adams directed, and he's also starring in it with Anthony Michael Hall, because it's an episode where they're sort of delving into Reverend Purdy's past, things that we didn't know about him before. You find out that he was like a carnival preacher, and then he sort of gets involved with this con artist who tried to swindle this woman's money out of her mother and stuff like that. So it was a great episode, and I kept hoping that we would see more work from John in terms of directing in future episodes. As much as I love the show, season 6 was the biggest misfire for me with regards to where the story went in terms of these characters that we've come to love for 5 seasons. Season 6 started off with the episode Heritage, where they kill off Walt Bannerman, which was one of the worst ideas ever. And then they decided to write out not only Gene Purdy, David Ogden Steyer's character, but also Bruce Lewis. They decided to sort of bring it around where Sarah was pregnant with Walt's baby, and then Walt's killed, and then there's like trying to reconnect the relationship between Johnny and Sarah, and I just thought it was horrible writing and a horrible plan. Walt dying and this character named Malcolm Janus dying, who was kind of an influencer on Greg Stilson, both of them died in this fire. And when Johnny reaches out, like when Johnny interacts with Stilson and shakes his hand, he doesn't see Armageddon anymore, so it's almost like it stopped it. So that's the reason why Bruce leaves. Bruce gets a job, as Johnny says, well, I don't see Armageddon anymore. So I'm like going, okay, because of one vision, Bruce just leaves. And it just, I hated it. And he would come back for one other episode named called Drift, which was episode 10. But at that point, you know, they had destroyed what I thought made the show a success. I just thought it was really poor writing, and then the fact that the show was canceled after season 6 and we never got a resolution to any of it, and the Armageddon flashes come back at the end of season 6. It just really, really left a sour taste in my mouth because there was so much promise of better episodes that they could have done and darker storylines that they could have done. But this is all going back to say is that I just thought John L. Adams was fantastic as Bruce Lewis, and I continue to just be marveled at the work that he did on the show. And I'm hoping that he gets a chance to sort of, now that he's getting back into his acting roots, that he gets a chance to shine again in a new show. My hope of them doing some type of follow-up to The Dead Zone, some type of television movie or anything, that's gone. I mean, it's been 17 years since the show ended. The show was canceled in 2007. It's 2024. I doubt they're gonna do any kind of follow-up to that series. This one was my show. It was one of my favorite shows of all time, in my top 5 easily. And not only did Anthony Michael Hall have a big part of that, initially bringing me on board, but John L. Adams, Bruce Lewis, that character, I just love the fact that he played this guy that was just a physical therapist. He had a client that was John Smith, but he had such a good moral compass, and he, again, very much like Dr. Loomis and Ryan Dallion from Friday the 13th series, he did things that were the right thing to do, even if it was something that, he didn't really need to be involved in. He would do the right thing. And I think that's why I just valued that character so much, and the heart and depth that John L. Adams brought to that character. And the last thing I'm going to leave this on is that last year when I met Anthony Michael Hall at Halloween 45, I had him sign this. And the reason why I had him sign this in particular item was because back in 2004, there was I believe it was Best Buy, they had this tour going. It was right when season 3 was premiering, and season 2 had come out on DVD. Where John L. Adams and Anthony Michael Hall were doing this small tour. I believe it was only in LA, signing copies of The Dead Zone. And one day I hope to get John L. Adams' autograph on this as well. So that would be awesome, because I kept saying, God, if they could only come up to where I live in Northern California, that would have been fantastic. But grateful to have met Anthony Michael Hall, and hopefully one day I get to meet John L. Adams. So thank you everyone again for watching. I hope everyone's doing well. Talk to you again real soon. Take it easy. Stay scared as always. Peace.
You're a good man. And a good man remembers where that line is.
Maybe I was just lucky enough that you were there to remind me.
Me? And I was halfway downtown chasing that mugger. How can I remind you of anything? You mean in a vision? Yeah. I thought the last vision you had of me,
Yeah.
So something that I said while I was dying.
Yeah.
Well, it goes to prove only one thing. It always pays to listen to me.
So what if you're not there for me the next time?
I'll always be there for you. Trust me. But yet, trust yourself.
Hey, my fellow Fright Fiends, I just want to thank everyone for supporting BoogeyMan Ben's Horror Zone. If you haven't yet subscribed and you'd like to, please hit the subscribe button down below. Click the bell notification so you're updated every time I drop a new video. I try to drop a video at least once or twice a week. The Horror Zone is a passion of mine, and it really makes me happy that I can share that passion with all of you guys. Thanks so much again for the support, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Take it easy. Stay scared as always.
Horror Zone.